Well, last time I have asked whether this was an end of the Keynesianism, and when you look to the modern economics, actually, you see that Keynesian ideas did not die completely, and it actually even there was a new school of Keynesianism formed, which is New Keynesianism, and actually the more radical wing of the post-Keynesians have also become active, and they become kind of their ideas become popular also. Well, and this means that actually there are still, people who try to look Keynes and try to find some, ideas there. Even maybe try to try to recreate the old system in 1950s and 60s that kind of have been successful in 1950s and 60s to create a kind of at least a stable and growing economic system, which decrease inequalities, but at the same time, and at the same time also decrease the poverty. Well, that might mean that the new system we live in, even though it has some benefits and we will see certain benefits, still make people look for alternatives. So something seems not pleasing people, even making them afraid. And what that is can be questioned, and we will do it to some extent in the coming sections. And alternative economic views, including Keynesianism and to some extent also Marxism and some other views, they are still very much in demand. However, Keynesianism as the main guide, the main economic view that is guiding the system, that has kind of shifted in 1970s and 1980s. And in academia also this made the alternative views more popular, and the neoclassical view especially, which argues market should be promoted more, has become more dominant. And one important figure, not because he was the most radical one, I believe that among them basic the presidents and the heads of the governments, the most radical person was actually Margaret Thatcher. There could be even more radical ones in the smaller countries, so they should be looked upon. But Reagan was, of course, the head of the United States, the country which was the hegemony in the world. So that way he was also his views become more effective in shaping the rest of the world. And Reagan has many different aspects, but when we look to his economic views, which affect the world, first, he was very much pro-flexible labor market. Flexible means workers and employers should be able to make contract themselves, and they should basically set the conditions themselves. There should not be standards that are enforced upon them by the government. Well, from the labor union's perspective, those standards are enforced because workers didn't have sufficient bargaining power. Workers could not bargain with the employers single-handedly. Employers had more power, so basically that bargaining in a way should basically take place at the state level, at the political level. But according to the Reagan and the view he represents, basically workers had that power, and they should, and those standards that are set from above by the political system was actually restricting them. And he had one important point actually. That restriction was especially effective when it comes for the workers which were actually non-traditional, like women, like the certain ethnic minorities, especially the new immigrants coming to the country, uh, who are not traditional labor force, basically. And he was also not that much, he was also against unions because he also thought that unions are also preventing some workers, like non-traditional workers, as well as more productive workers, to get their share from the market. Um, Famously, he believes unions create unemployment, and those unemployment is especially harming those people who are at the margins of the labor market. Again, like women, old people, for example. Um, and he was also pro lower tax rate. This is the um, chart he showed, basically. I mean, this is not the Laffer. Uh, there's another chart. Okay, this is not Laffer curve. There's another chart where he shows Laffer curve, which is basically he tries to show that when you increase the tax rate to very high values, in that case, the tax you actually get from the companies will fall. Why? Because they will stop producing, so they will get less income as a result of your tax, and since they have less income, even though tax rate is higher, you will get actually a lower amount of money. The Laffer curve is a very much a big discussion between the economics, whether to what extent it is significant, to what extent actually high tax rates make the companies to decrease their production level, because competition might still make them invest, although of course their ability to invest might be reduced. And then of course are those taxes used for something useful by the government, something that is useful for the companies? It might be a question. Um, well, Reagan was also at the same time very much against the welfare state. There's these conditions that are set by the government to provide a minimum life standards for the workers, um, which in some cases were set as right for all citizens. In other cases, they were set as rights for people below a certain amount of income level. He thought the welfare state is typically was trying to was actually encouraging people not to work, become basically just become sufficient with the money that's coming from the state. And if anything, it might also, I mean, this is a secondary argument. If welfare state is providing some income or revenue, this might actually decrease the wages people give to the companies give to the workers, because they might just think that now workers might be okay with that just because they are already getting some benefits from the government. But anyway, I mean, it was the argument was welfare state is actually taking from the workers that are productive and basically willing to work, and giving it to the people who are not willing to work, or who are at least not that much productive, which was, according to Reagan's viewpoint, harmful for the economy. All of these points might be discussed a lot, but basically these points become dominant in the Reagan's era, and they become also the basic dominant viewpoints in the economics in many sense, starting in the 1980s. Well, for example, in macroeconomics, especially whenever you in basic microeconomics, there are some exceptions, but the initial chapters, at the very least, you see that whenever you interact with the market, the results are always bad. And there are some exceptions to that, but basically, I mean, the core models built on the assumption those exceptions are rare. Most goods are not public goods, for example, and mostly you don't have externalities, which are the cases where the market might not produce best possible results. You might look for them if you are interested in the externalities and the public goods case. And in other countries, this view also, the view that when you leave things to the market, things might get better, also take root. As I said, Thatcher is a case, basically, in which case actually there was the Thatcher's country was governed by Labour Party for a long time, and Labour Party was also very much much more left than Roosevelt, and basically the U.S. governments, and you had the many sectors were actually have become nationalized. Thatcher privatized them again, and she even tried to create a tax rate which was flat tax, not in even sense of flat ratio, but rather everyone should give the same amount of money to the government, which was too extreme for her party, and basically was one of the reasons why she had to quit, basically. And Özal in Turkey is an example also, who removed protections, and also kind of his era was the era when the unions in Turkey have become weaker and weaker. And he was not the only person who was actually creating these results, but he becomes symbol of the economic liberalism in Turkey, which kind of celebrates these results even when they don't directly cause them. And an interesting example is Deng Xiaoping in China. Well, he still was considered himself as socialist, and to some extent state control was still, according to him, to some extent necessary. For example, state-regulated sectors should be there. But he thought that a certain amount of market mechanism might be helpful for promoting the development of China. So, for example, to encourage them to become more productive, in the agricultural sector, the collectives where many farmers come together and basically work together and share what they produce should be divided to individual farms, and individual farmers should basically cultivate their own land. It's called family responsibility system, if I'm remembering right, something similar to that. For example, a significant private sector was allowed in significant number of sectors, and a cheap workforce was created actually, which was coming from the rural areas, the very agricultural areas, who come to the cities did not have citizenship rights, because their citizenship rights is only valid in the states where they live and where they are from, and they become the cheap labor force which work in the private sector factories, while the state factories were still there, and at least the citizens of those relatively more developed places had more rights, basically. So Deng Xiaoping is another case. Of course, he did not go as far as the others go, but his starting point was pretty much the communist system. So he transformed communist system to a system where a kind of state control, collective control on economic system was now mixed with market. So in a way, he also promoted market, but his end point was a more mixed system, because the starting point was a system where market had, very limited role, basically. So this was a transformation created by different leaders at the time. Now we will look to the fall of the Soviet Union, which is basically our starting point in the next part.